Celine's Song's follow-up to the 2023 film Past Lives had a lot to live up against. Past Lives was hailed as this triumphant directorial debut with this beautiful story, a strong technical presence, and deep, thought-out characters. This is important to note later on with Materialists. Yet, whilst others raved on with these 5-star scores, I think I struggled to connect with Past Lives. I've said this multiple times in other reviews where I just don't relate to the film in any kind of way. It doesn't mean I don't like it. I still ended up giving it 4 stars because I thought all of those points were true. Strong characters, good cinematography, great score. But sometimes I just don't click, and I didn't find a lot of flaws with Past Lives. That's not the case here with Materialists. All of those notes about Past Lives, as I said, are very important when we talk about Materialists, because it is possible that Celine's Song flew too close to the sun, and that sun being her own personal experiences being put in a film instead of fleshing out characters. Hello and welcome back to Quiet on Set. My name is Lachlan Thiele, and this week I got to go see Materialists, Celine Song's latest film starring Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, and Chris Evans. Celine Song wrote and directed this film, and whilst at times I was engaged with scenes, especially this one particular dinner scene between Pedro and Dakota, sort of midway into the film, it opens up and it then continues to open and opens for a little bit longer, because the first half of this film is almost all opening, and it's almost an hour before we even get any bit of conflict within the narrative, and that means there's a lot of the same beats repeated over and over again, but more importantly, the same lines of dialogue repeated over and over again. And for me, that means the words 6 foot tall man, 100k salary, and decent looking, those are etched into my mind because the first hour of this film was just all of that repeated by Dakota Johnson every 5 minutes. And that means we aren't getting really good introductions to these characters, nor are we getting any kind of backstory on these characters. I looked at my watch probably a good 3 or 4 times in the first hour, wondering when we're going to be getting into this film, because it takes so long to get to almost anything interesting. That being said, I thought, oh, here we go again, a film that I'm not going to relate to. I could probably feel that maybe other people in this theater are enjoying it more than I am, and maybe this is going to be another one of those 5 out of 5 hits from Celine's Song that I just don't understand and I just don't click with. Connor has also seen the film, and he's going to be joining me in this review to share his own thoughts too.
Despite how beloved Celine Song's last film, Past Lives, was, Materialists reads like something she wrote way before that script. Messy drama can be very necessary for romantic comedies, but the messiness here feels very calculated and measured. None of it feels real, or at least real enough for the themes here. Transactional relationships, love struggling under capitalism, the expectations people have of their partners, it all offers so much for this movie to explore. In fact, I did cry twice while watching this movie, despite not being really invested in anything that was going on. And that was primarily due to how resonant the themes here are. I could relate to a lot of it, and I'm sure Celine could as well. Though her need to write scripts based on her exact experiences, especially her experiences as a matchmaker in New York City, drives her to write more based on relativity than authenticity.
Hearing Connor say he cried even without being invested kind of assured me that I was looking at a film that was emotionally driven, but the emotions just weren't there. And that comes down to writing. We truly do not get a backstory for John and Lucy. We get one, and exactly one flashback that is them arguing in a busy New York City street, and that's all we get to go on. That is not much to go on, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we needed more flashbacks, or we just needed more backstory between these two characters, just because I'm not invested in her and Harry at all. Dakota Johnson and Pedro Pascal's character, I'm not invested in them because there's not much to build up in their relationship, and I get that that's the point, is that there isn't love in their relationship. It's attraction, but there still has to be something there that kind of hooks you into that attachment. But even with the relationship that you're meant to support and be hoping that ends up being, you don't have anything to root for because you don't know them. These characters are so thin, not thought out, that you just end up not caring about who they end up being with. The fact that in past lives we had some really interesting layered characters to then be given these surface level characters in Materialists is just disappointing.
Without authentic characters or dialogue, the film struggles to pick a tone or direction, ultimately landing in the most predictable of outcomes. Of course it was going to end like that. The film lacks so much real character motivation. Pimpleton's score is beautiful, and the cinematography is really gorgeous at points, but it struggles under how aimless everything else feels.
Connor said it first. The score and cinematography is fantastic. It's something that engaged me, that was technically impressive. And whilst I have criticized the characters, I don't have any notes for the actors. Dakota, Pedro, Chris, they all deliver on these lukewarm characters that they were given. Star value doesn't really add much here either. Pedro Pascal was exclusively the reason my girlfriend wanted to see this film, and even she was let down. She doesn't care about cinematography, she doesn't care about score, right? She's there for the entertainment of the film. And she wasn't entertained, nor was she engaged. She was quite disappointed overall. We're three different people from three different backgrounds, and we all have different films that we love. But we all agree that this film has really great technical achievements, but it loses its audience and it loses us from one big misstep, and that's not fleshing out their characters. And I think that's the most important part in a movie, is the characters. That is fundamentally why we go and watch or consume media, is stories about characters that are engaging, and they just weren't, which was disappointing. I've written out a couple of different endings to this review, but Connor's closing statement, I think, is the best way to close it out.
In past lives, the characters may be very understanding of the love triangle situation they're going through, but Materialists comes off like a parody of that. Every character's thoughts couldn't be made any clearer, and conclusions are reached without any difficulty, especially one that happens near the end that is pretty egregious. It's all too clean for a movie about struggling to find love and maintaining it. Love is messy, it's exhausting, but it's also an incredibly emotional experience that can't be summed up into a single word, or really any words for that matter. And while Celine's song tries her best to do that, she ends up calculating all the messiness, all the emotionality into a net zero conclusion.